Humberside actually, and there was a man, and he had been working in the same company for most of his life. In fact, ever since he was a kid, he did a trade and did an apprenticeship, and then became this person who worked in this job, and then made his way up the ranks and stayed in the same company. Well, it happened, one day he got made redundant. And he was absolutely devastated because this has been his life. This has been all he'd known. So he didn't know how he was going to tell his wife and his children because they depended on him, and there was a certain lack of self-esteem that was lost, and he felt really humiliated, basically. Well, to get to this company that he worked in, he used to have to go over the Humber Bridge, and so he decided that he would, even though he was made redundant, he would do that just until he found his feet and could find the courage to tell his family. So he would go off in the morning, and he would go over the bridge, and he would, get the local paper and sit in the cafe, and wouldn't come home until 5 o'clock or whatever it was time when he usually came home. So he pretended that everything was as normal. Meanwhile, this man was getting more and more depressed. And, well, it had been a couple of weeks, and he'd been going over and, becoming quite regular in this cafe. And, well, anyway, one morning when he went over, he got to the toll booth. In those days, you had a person, and I don't know if it's changed now, but you had a person who take your money and actually say something to you in the morning. And well, he got to the toll booth, and he said the guy who was there in the booth, he said, the person in front of you has just paid for you to go over the bridge. And he goes, what? He said, no, don't give me the money. Somebody in front has just paid for you. And he goes, wow. That's, he's just overcome. He just couldn't believe it. No, it never happened to him before. Anyway, something in him shifted. Something, just, this kind gesture made him feel, a whole lot better. So when he got to his usual cafe, where he used to sit and have his cup of tea and his, his breakfast, his late breakfast, he got the paper, and it was the new, the latest sort of, magazine, Advantage or whatever it is that you have over there in Humberside. And he opened it up, onto the specific page, and the page just sort of fell open, and there it was, and there was this, as it happens sometimes, there was this little article for a job, this wanted for a job, and it was a job that he'd always kind of thought that he would like to do, but never had a chance to do because he'd only known this one job for the whole of his life, and this was his trade, and this was who he was. So he thought, well, wow, and it just sort of pulled him. The job thing just pulled him. So he got on his mobile, and he called, and he said, I'd like to see if I can have an interview for this job, and do you have an application form? And he said, well, you can come around and get an application form. We're just round the corner if you like. So he went round to the company, and he got this application form. And as soon as he walked into the building, he thought, I'd like to work here. And he filled out the application form. He took it back that same day. They said, would you like to come tomorrow for an interview? And yeah, that's what he did. He went home, and he didn't mention anything to his wife. He got home, and the next morning he went to the Humber Bridge. He went to the toll booth, and he handed the man the money, and he said, and here's some money for the car behind me. And so he went on and he went across and he kind of, looked in his rearview mirror to see, if there was any action. But of course you have to go too fast. You can't really see what was going on. And so that was lost. But he went on and he went to the interview for his job, and they gave him the job there and then. They said, you can start next week. So this man he just couldn't believe the order of events that had happened in his life. Anyway, he went straight home and he said, look, he pulled his wife to the side and he said, sit down, I've got something I need to tell you. And he said, for the past 2 weeks, I've been unemployed, but today I've got a new job. And she looked at him and she said, I can't believe, we've been married all these years and you couldn't tell me that you'd lost your job. You must have been suffering by yourself all these, she was overwhelmed of the fact that he couldn't find it in himself to share it. And she was so happy that he'd actually found this new job. And it sounded like, from what he was telling her, that it was a job that he'd always wanted to do, and in fact the money was potentially could reach, a better status, and that was that. And as far as the toll booth goes, well, who knows who else is paying for somebody else, the next morning, the evening, whatever. But the story goes on.
Thanks.